Credit, Lesson 7. Cash advances, interest rates, and penalties. In this video, you're going to learn about credit card interest, cash advances, the best time to make a credit card payment, and what happens if you make a late payment. Ideally, you should pay off the balance of your credit card every month. But sometimes life happens, and people from one reason or another let their credit card debt get out of control. You can quickly find yourself in debt if you misuse your credit card to pay for things that you can't afford. Sometimes this happens intentionally because you buy stuff that you want but you don't have the money to pay for. Other times it happens unintentionally when you find yourself in a bad situation and you don't have an emergency fund to fall back on. The good news is if you actually put everything we covered up until this point into action, it'll help you avoid these scenarios. Having an emergency fund and a budget can go a long way when it comes to preventing credit card misuse. But let's talk about what happens if you don't pay your credit card off every month, starting with interest. So what is a credit card's APR? APR stands for annual percentage rate, and when it comes to credit cards, it's the exact same thing as if you said credit card interest. So, for example, if you don't pay your credit card bill in full every month, you're going to have to pay the balance that you owe for whatever you purchased, plus the APR on top of that amount. The amount of interest charged to borrow money is going to vary from card to card and from person to person, depending on their credit score and payment history. The main thing you need to remember is that when you pay your credit card bill in full every month, before the due date, you're not going to owe any interest. I could explain the complexity of APRs and credit card interest in a lot more detail, but I'm not trying to put you to sleep. The way interest is calculated on credit cards is incredibly boring and hard to understand. Your math teacher would probably love to have you figure out all the calculations using complex formulas, but that's not how people do it in the real world. The easiest thing to do is search the phrase credit card APR calculator online and use one of the dozens of free online calculators to figure out how much you're going to owe if you don't pay off your balance each month. Something really important to know is that most credit card companies have what's known as a grace period. This is the amount of time that you have to make a payment before being charged interest. The grace period usually starts on the first day of the billing cycle and ends anywhere between 21 and 25 days later. Every credit card is different, so pay attention to the fine print. If you forget, you can always just call the credit card company and ask. A longer grace period gives you more time to pay off your balance and avoid interest charges. If you decide to carry a balance and not pay your bill in full every month, interest is charged based on your average daily balance throughout the month. If you carry a balance, you will be charged interest in addition to whatever amount you spend on your credit card. If you don't pay that amount off by the next due date, more interest gets piled on and added to that amount, and the amount you owe just continues to grow and grow. Credit card debt can get really ugly really quick when you get charged interest on top of interest on top of interest. Paying less than your full balance might save you money this month, but it's going to cost you a lot more in the long run. If you really want something that you can't afford, it's easy to tell yourself, oh, it's not a big deal. I can just make the minimum payment. It'll be fine. And this is because minimum payments are usually dirt cheap, like $25 a month or 1 to 2% of the balance owed on the credit card. So if you make the minimum payments on time, yeah, it'll keep your account in good standing and it'll report positively to the credit bureaus. However, it does virtually nothing for paying down the balance that you owe. If you make only the minimum payment each month, it's going to take you forever to pay off your credit card. The best option is to avoid this stressful scenario altogether and just don't use your credit card. The only time you should use it is when you have a specific plan that's designed to build your credit. Using a credit card for things that you can't afford can lead to a lot of problems. In Lesson 10, you're going to learn how to build credit without going into debt. Another thing you need to be aware of is late fees. If you don't pay the minimum amount by the due date, the lender is going to charge you a late fee. Thankfully, the law limits how much credit card companies can charge for late fees. As of 2020, lenders can only charge up to $29 for the first time you're late, or $40 if you've been late for more than one payment within the last 6 months. As much as paying a late fee sucks, Having a late payment on your credit report is a lot worse. So what happens when you screw up and accidentally make a late payment, or you can't afford to make a payment? Like I mentioned in the last slide, if you don't make your payment on time, you're going to get charged a late fee, and it's going to show up negatively on your credit report. If you don't make the minimum payment for 2 consecutive months, your card is going to be suspended. Your interest rate will most likely jump to the penalty rate, which is a whopping 29.99%. And you probably won't be approved for any new unsecured credit cards for a long time. If you don't make the minimum payments for 4 months, most lenders are going to close your credit card and send the amount that you owe to a collection agency, which is going to even further damage your credit. Trust me, you definitely want to avoid all of these scenarios. If you find yourself in an emergency where you need cash, credit cards have an option where you can do what's called a cash advance. This money does not come from your bank account, it comes from the line of credit on your credit card. The amount of cash you get advanced gets added to the balance that you owe. If you use a cash advance, you're going to be charged a cash advance fee, which is usually between 3 to 5% of the amount that you borrowed. So if you get a cash advance of $300, the fee would be anywhere from like $9 to $15. Depending on the terms of your credit card agreement, the APR for the cash advance could be up to 30%, which is significantly higher than the APR for most credit cards. So while this might be convenient if you're in a pinch, it's a terrible option that you should never consider. If you find yourself relying on a credit card to float you through an emergency, it's only going to make your life harder in the long run, especially if you're already struggling to pay your bills. Adding a credit card payment on top of that can be crushing. This is exactly why having an emergency account is so important. Most people don't have one, and that's why they find themselves in these types of scenarios, making desperate choices that lead to more financial hardships. We highly recommend that you never ever use a cash advance. If for some reason you do use a cash advance, make sure you pay it off as soon as possible. You don't get a grace period like you do with a regular credit card purchase. Interest starts being added to the cash advance as soon as you get the money in your hand. And that high interest will continue to pile on every single day. Lenders don't like to see people use cash advances because it usually means that they're desperate. This type of behavior can lead to using payday loans, which are even worse of a debt trap. To sum up everything in this lesson, the longer you take to pay off your credit cards, the more interest you're going to end up paying overall. Making just the minimum payment is how people get into trouble using credit cards. Credit cards have high interest rates for regular purchases and even higher rates for cash advances. Pay your credit card bill in full and on time every month, and you won't have to pay any interest. In the next lesson, we're going to show you how to compare credit cards and find the one that's right for you.